Welcome back, friends, to the second part of what we're calling our chopstick binding. Today we're going to take the signatures that we made and weave them into the spine of the journal. But first, what I'd like to do is just a quick review of our spindle signatures. We'll get rid of the ladies here. They were just the greeting committee. Here is one of the signatures that we did. Remember, we did one that was slightly smaller with a different material on it. Here's another one. We did three with a little bit thicker. This is the one that is wrapped with the coffee filters and then dyed with ink, walnut ink. The little one here is mainly tissue paper that's been stamped on. So if you recall, we have our 4 signatures, and we bound those to the spindle with our thread, that thicker embroidery thread. Now on this smaller spindle, I actually wrapped it all 2 to 3 times just to give it a stronger, heftier look because it is smaller. On this one, remember, here's one that's only wrapped once, here's twice, so it's up to you what you want to do as far as the wrapping. So, we are ready to begin. Now, remember also that I said you can do as many of these weaving wraps as you want. It can be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many you're willing to put up with. I've chosen to do 3. I have already begun 2 of the wrappings, just for to save a little time, and I've chosen a thick yarn almost. It's not being used, I'm sure, for the reason that it was made. It's for knitting, but I chose this one because it's thick and it's purple and you should be able to see it. So let me show you the first step. I have another piece here and we're going to put it in right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to, before I go on any further, friends, if you see anything that looks like it's backwards, I'm left-handed. So I do things from, of course, a left-handed person. And it may seem strange at times to those of you who are right-handed. We stuck our thread underneath the spindle and between the spindle and the material. And we're going to wrap it through twice. Now you can see I'm using a little pair of scissors just to help it get on through. And later we'll talk about different types of material that you can use for this. Once we've wrapped it through as many times as we want and leave as much of a tail as you want, on this one, I did not leave as much as I did on the one that I'm going to show you at the end, because I know these are not going to wind up in a journal this way. But you can use it, leave it long in case you want to add something to it. So now we tie it off snugly with just a regular knot, and we have our 3 areas. You can kind of move it around so they're all about in the same location. So there are our 3 beginning weaving pieces of fabric. The second step is to just start weaving in between. We line this up so that our thread will go into the right place. See how these do not line up? That's okay. It doesn't matter as long as you can get the thread through the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th spindle at about the same place. So holding the spindles together, now I will tell you that this gets a little cumbersome, and if you have a good clamp like that, that's a good thing to do to kind of just hold it in place while you work on it. So that will just keep it a little more stable. Now, we're going to take this thread and we're going to go underneath. This will take a minute. This is where I told you you need patience with this particular binding. It's got to go under the, here it comes. See this? Underneath our second one. So now, same thing. We're going to loop it around. We're going to go, get my fingers out of the way. We're going to go back through and come up again. Now, some of you may prefer to use a stick or perhaps a needle. Whatever will help you push this around the spindles. Now, on this second spindle, we've wrapped it one time. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it a second time. I wanted to tell everybody that I appreciate all the views and all the comments and questions, and I'll always do my best to answer them. So now we have two of our spindles together. We would do the same thing with this. I think for the sake of time, we will just go ahead and do two of the wraps. The third wrap, or whatever number you choose to do, would be exactly the same. Now I am choosing to go under and over. It's like toilet paper, friends. It doesn't matter if you go over and under or under and over. The whole point is you just wrap the spindles together. And you, as you go along, you can check and make sure. Let me get it up here where you can see I'm actually pushing that through. I'm looking over here. There it is. You know, it just occurred to me a crochet hook might work for this kind of thing too. So once I get that up, let's pull that little puppy up here. There's this little face. Again, we're going to go ahead and wrap a second time. It does get a little more challenging, let's put it that way, the more of these that you have around. Now this one we do need a little help with. Here he comes. I'll talk about some other material that you can use for this wrap too, because this type of material is obviously not the only one. So now we want to just kind of push him back so that they're, I don't think I need that now. They are actually kind of aligned. And, whoops, wrong. Oh, here he is. So we'll go back through for the second time. Notice there's a little gap there. That's okay, because we will tighten him up. Here it comes. A stiffer type of material might be pretty easy to use on this. Now, what you can do as you go along is that you can pull these again a little tighter to make sure they haven't come loose. And I would say that's probably a pretty good idea all along. This is a little bit loose because my slip knots here have come a little bit loose. So you can untie your knot here and tighten it a little bit. It's kind of self-regulating as you go. Take your time. You know that the basic steps are to wrap the spindles together. You want a little play in them because they're going to have to lay flat, but you don't want too much. So that's why down here, I don't make a real tight knot because I might want to undo it and pull from this end to make sure that they're tight together also. But for right now, we're going to call that good. And as I said, I'm going to show you a finished one. Now this will move back and forth. That's okay. So now we have 2. We'll do one more. We made 4 signatures, but I think you get the idea that no matter how many signatures you have, it's the same premise. We're going to use this one with a smaller spindle. Not terribly smaller, but it is smaller than our cigar-looking things here. And we're going to line this up. One of the comments that I got was the idea of making these using a more uniform substrata like a roll so that you could have the same length and width on the end, that then as you work it, you would be able to, you'd have uniform bottom and you could then allow the book to stand up. And obviously that's perfectly good. I've only done, as I said, one of these books. So as I continue to work with them, I'm sure I'll come up with some better ideas. And therefore, when you're working with them, understand that this is just to help you get started with what I think is a wonderfully unique binding. Now, I've done these 2, I always went underneath. Today, on this one, because of the way it's situated, I can just wrap it like that. I don't have to go under anything. This one, right, let me pull the right ribbon. What did I do, lose him? Let's see where he's hiding. He's hiding right here. So here is this one. Now this time with this one, we're gonna go down and around instead of up and around. Push it through. Catch him with whatever instrument you're using. Another thread that would be good for this is a thick waxed linen. It would be stiffer and it might come through easier. I'm going to go ahead and go around this twice, as we did with the others. Come on out, little guy. Now see how loose that is? Well, that's very easy to rectify. Same thing here. Now, again, this will look slightly different because of the sizes of the spindle and the different look. And you just snug it up, kind of make sure that it all lines up pretty good. And just for the purpose of showing you what the final, again, when I say final, it's only because I've made 4. You can make as many signatures as you want. This one, we will go back like we did in the beginning, and we will go under and around. Our little signature wants to squirm out of the way. And we would wrap this the same way. We would go through twice. We'll go ahead on this one and go through. I believe I mentioned in the first video that this is for demonstration purposes only. So this is not going to look like a completed journal. I actually have designs for these signatures that will be used after. All right, so one more time through, and then I want to just do a little review. I suppose a better title for this would be a weaving binding, but I kind of like the Chopstick name. So you call it whatever you want. Call it Mama Judy's Chopstick, call it weaving, call it, oh my gosh, what's the matter with her, whatever you want. All right, so we're going to pretend that we're done. All 4 of these would be bound together. Kind of hard to pretend it's done when it's wobbling so much. But you'll see on the one that I did do a better example. What I want to show you now, when you are done, your binding is going to come up through like this. You can tie it off in a variety of ways. You can tie it off by using glue, which reminds me, anywhere along in here that you see something shifting, you don't like it, such as one of these, you can put a dab of glue to hold it in place. This is the thing I like about this binding, this will get you started, and then you can just create whatever you want and call it whatever you want, because it's just very, very flexible. You can tie it off with a knot. You can actually go back to your beginning one and take the 2, I've gotten out of whack here, but take the 2 and tie them together like that. So that should just give you an idea of how we are getting the binding to keep the spindles together. The more uniform your spindles, the more uniform your back will look. That's all we're going to demonstrate on that. We're going to go now to the journal I actually finished that began this process. All right, friends, this is the final part that I wanted to show you, which is the completed journal that began this process. Again, it is 4 signatures. It has been done the way that we did the demo one. Here are the brown threads that wrap the signature to this spine. This light brown thread is the same as the purple thread I used today to take the signatures and weave them together into the spine. Now, there are some differences that you can do with this. First of all, you can have either a soft cover or a hard cover, depending upon what your preference is. If you're going to do a hard cover, it's merely making one of the pages that I talked about, the way that I make my pages for the signature. But on one side is your hard cover. Right here is where it was glued. Somewhere in here, back here, is the other side, which was the paper. So that is very easy to do. You just simply glue it so that it is the page, the hard cover on one side, the soft on the other. And you just then have to make sure when you put your signatures together that the hard is the very first page of that particular signature, and then that particular signature will be the one on the top. The same is true of the back. This is a hard cover. You can see where it's been glued onto the fabric. That gives me a hard front and back. That was one of the questions I got, which I appreciated. Want to go back again to the way that we can tie off all these signatures into the spine. You'll notice mine are tied off with this bead. Let's go farther in. You can see this was the tail, like we had on our demo, our purple tail. I slid the bead down as far as I could, snugged it up, and then tied it in a knot like that. Let me use this needle to get it down tight. I've already got a knot in there, so this is just a secondary. You would want to snug it down to the top of the bead and then put some glue on it to hold it in place. So using a bead is one example of tying it off. You can simply make big knots and use glue to tie it off. So you have nothing but knots, a huge knot with the tail. The other thing that I want to try at some point, and let's see if I have something in this area up here that might work, is to take a stick, like a tree branch, a small tree branch, and simply do the same thing and then tie it off so you have another texture on top of everything. So there are a variety of ways that you can tie it off. None of them are good or bad. They just are different. And you again experiment with what works for you. We'll go here. Also, in parting, I want to show you what it looks like between signatures. I can never find, oh, there we go. Okay, so there's our two signatures there. It allows the book to lie flat, which if you've made it either to view or to work in, you do want it to lie as flat and as steady as you can. This will do it. Before we leave, before we part ways, I want to talk also about encaustic wax. When I finished doing these spindles, I did a layer of encaustic wax, which makes them very hard and preserves them. Also gives them more texture. But what I found is if you put any kind of a coating on them before you get it all put together, it will make it a little more difficult. Wax or some of the other surfaces we might decide to put on it can actually make it a little harder because it sticks to bring the threads through. Do I think that you should not do encaustic? Absolutely not. I think it's a wonderful texture and I love encaustic wax, but you just need to understand that sometimes when we put a texture on the spindles, before we weave them together, it can make it a little more work to bring it all together. I think that's it, friends. I hope that you will go about making your own version of this and that you understand that it's all up to you. This is only the beginning and the guideline. Thank you all for joining us.